Good afternoon. I'm here to discuss the book of Robert Whitaker, my reactions personally to the findings in the book and the topics, discussions discussed by Mr. Whitaker regarding mental health illness, mental health disease, mental health status. Personally, what I've learned and what I've taken away, my personal reaction from Whitaker's book is that that biomedical context and that approach, in my personal opinion, has definitely contributed to the epidemic that we currently know today in our society with mental health and such long-term diagnosis from mental health and the treatment that has actually contributed, in my opinion, again, to the further lengthiness of such a diagnosis, meaning that like Whitaker discusses, the possibility that these medications have, in fact, caused this mental illness or caused this mental disease to remain versus an individual understanding and meeting that actual recovery from it. My personal opinion and my reaction to Whitaker is that he's on to something, a very huge topic and point that maybe possibly the treatments from medication itself is just not going to do it. It is not that fix. There should be a bigger emphasis placed on mental health and evaluation, assessment, and the actual diagnosis for an individual and how it came to be that, this person, in fact, should take home that diagnosis and they should take home that label as being, for example, mentally disabled by bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or anxiety or depression. So Whitaker thoroughly researches and discusses the use of medication and the long-term effects of that medication and its contribution towards the sustainability of that particular mental health disease. I believe in the self health approach model because I think that to incorporate an individual personally, having them acknowledge their strengths, their strength based, this is the model I mean, the strength based model would be a huge piece in the recovery process, in my opinion. And I think it should definitely be reviewed by doctors and pharmaceutical companies and all of those, the APA and all of those, individuals and organizations and companies that make the decisions on how to treat mental illness, utilizing and incorporating a strength-based approach because there are many findings and many research statistics that prove over time an individual who reflects and who is able to come to an understanding personally of the mental health that they're currently enduring and utilizing their own hope and their own strength and their own tactics and their own ways to navigate with it and through it, beyond it, have been successful in recovery. That strength-based model, it just, to me, it just reveals that life and the environment in which we live all contributes to everything that any human being, regardless of any kind of medical diagnosis, must endure. I think that individuals personally that have a diagnosis of one of the ones I mentioned, schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, I think that there is a huge discrimination and stigma against them that they're incompetent or incapable or, they're not aware and mentally they just don't know any better or mentally they, oh, you can't succeed at this or you're not going to succeed at that because mentally you're schizophrenic or mentally you're low, you're too depressed, or mentally you have so much anxiety you just can't concentrate and focus. And I think that that's a definitely a setback and a fallback in life itself, period. How can you find just sustainability as far as work is concerned, as far as family is concerned, social context is concerned, because you have to be able to live even though you have this diagnosis. And so people that have been diagnosed like that, they have these barriers and they have these huge blocks to overcome. And I think it's kind of unfair. I think that definitely it shouldn't exist in the medical realm. You can't assume that a person is incompetent or incapable based on a diagnosis. Whitaker thoroughly discusses in his book that, these kind of individuals, They have so many roadblocks. They have so many situations in which they're being treated again and again with all these medicines over again, a medicine for this, a medicine for that, a medicine for this. The pharmaceutical companies are getting more money and billions of dollars in revenue for medications to treat people, but yet these people have lived and suffered with such an illness for decades and there's no recovery. And so Whitaker is explaining in the book, any illness, any medical condition has the potential to recover. You have to, be treated and healed with the expectation that you're going to, recover at some point. And so his discussion and his ideas in his book explains, mental health status, mental health diagnoses. There's people that are just not recovering and they're living a lifelong legacy of mental illness. I love Whitaker's approach and I love his explanation that the government needs to review and revisit the treatments in the biomedical context, in which is used very widely today. Pretty much the way people are treated with mental health and mental illness. The impact that individuals have from the stigma and the discrimination is huge, because you have these blocks that prevent you from working, you have these blocks that prevent you from being social. The book explains how the medications have led to another incident or another health concern. And really, the idea when you are diagnosed, or the idea when you are evaluated and assessed and it's come to terms that yes, in fact, you possibly have schizophrenia, the idea is to help a person through that time. The idea is to recover that person. And in recovery, this person should be able to learn the tools and the ways in which you can live your life comfortably, and you can live your life independently with your diagnosis. So Whitaker has a huge point. I love his book, and I love, the ideas in which he discusses and how the biomedical model compared to, like the biopsychosocial and the strength-based approach and things like that, how they, they should have that correlation. I respect his discussion and I respect his views and I agree with his views. It's influenced my thoughts over mental health tremendously, just because I had no idea in some of the aspects in which are discussed in the book that, I mean, I had an idea, but I had no true knowledge of the specific statistical impact in which he references as an epidemic in which our world we live in today has had over millions and millions of people, including our children, being diagnosed at such young ages and being treated with these medications from, young ages of 12 and 13 up until well past middle age adulthood. And so it's sad. And the book just is an eye opener to this particular issue in life and society in which we're dealing with. I think that there has to be more research done to verify, which Whitaker explains in the book scientifically, what the medicine is really doing, research and scientific evidence that shows medication working and recovering, and medication, how is it specifically designed to help one individual compared to another individual. One person diagnosed with schizophrenia has this and is going through that, but that doesn't mean that every single person with schizophrenia has that same kind of issue or that same kind of mental health concern. And so I think that the book, it over and over again stresses the desire to go back in and research scientifically, be able to prove that this medication in fact is able to do exactly what the doctors are giving it to people and saying it can do. I think there should be a long-term follow-up each and every time you're at a doctor's office and you're visiting the doctor and he's assessing and evaluating you and decides, hey, I'm going to put you on another medication. There should be scientific research and there should be proof and evidence that suggests, well, maybe the change in the medication is something that we should explore at this time. In my opinion, I believe that there is not enough, nowhere near enough exploration regarding medication and how the doctors actually prescribe them for people and clients today. It's very easy to go in there and have a medication prescribed and then go back in another month and have another medication prescribed and then back in another month. And then sometimes if you switch to another doctor, the same thing, they go back and prescribe another medication. So in my opinion, what people have to go through regarding that is it's a very long process, tedious process, and one that is in need of extra exploration. I have a quote from the Anatomy of an Epidemic book, and I'd like to incorporate in my video. For the past 25 years, the psychiatric establishment has told us false story. It told us that schizophrenia, depression, bipolar illness are known to be brain diseases, even though, as the Mind Freedom Hunger Strike revealed, it can't direct us to any scientific studies that document this claim. It told us that psychiatric medications fix chemical imbalances in the brain, even though decades of research failed to find this to be so. It told us that Prozac and other second-generation psychotropics were much better and safer than the first-generation drugs. Even the clinical studies have shown no such thing. Most important of all, the psychiatric establishment failed to tell us that drugs worsen long-term outcomes. And so for that, I mean, I've read the book and I've learned that last particular sentence is huge. Most important of all, the psychiatric establishment failed to tell us that drugs worsen long-term outcomes. And so I leave with a final message that for the hope and help of everyone diagnosed with a mental disorder or a mental disease, our country and our society and our communities can definitely come to agree that this has to be revisited. The model should be incorporated using biopsychosocial approach and self-strength-based approach to maybe get a new outcome. You try something new, maybe something new can come from that. And I appreciate the research and the issues and all of the facts and statistics I've learned from Whitaker's book surrounding the mental health status of many people. If I were to come into contact with a person and they're asking me as a social worker, what should I do with this particular diagnosis? I would, as a social worker, explain to them, let's begin by thinking about your personal strengths, how you have internalized that diagnosis, how you truly feel, how you truly understand that diagnosis, and begin there, helping them to connect with people that have the same diagnosis and community resources and organizations and groups that people that have already, like SACS, those individuals that are icons and huge in the mental health realm, and help them just become exposed and educated to other facets of recovery and other ideas surrounding mental health illness in general, and just giving them that sincere divine hope that you have the potential to be a productive member in society. You don't have to assume a title. You don't have to assume that you're mentally ill and incapable and incompetent. So as a social worker, it would be my job to advocate and to empower such an individual. Thank you.